Welcome to Let's Get Into It. I am your host, Sherelle Higgins. Let's Get Into It is a safe space to have real conversations that are meant to uplift, encourage, and let you know you are not the only one dealing with life. Each episode of Let's Get Into It is designed to provide illuminating and thought-provoking information on a variety of topics. In fact, no topic is off limit. If you would like to see a topic discussed, please feel free to make a recommendation. My special guest and I will have a great time discussing topics that the mainstream media wouldn't dare discuss. We will bring these conversations to you with an open mind, respectfully, from different perspectives, and most importantly, with love. Thank you for joining me and my special guest. Now, let's get into it. Hello. I am Sherelle Higgins, and I am the host of Let's Get Into It. And today has been a struggle for me. And the reason is because this memo signed by both the director of the Office of Management and Budget and also the acting director of the Office of Personnel Management. I wanted to jump on here and just really give you all some insight into what you can expect based on this memo. So I'm going to go through some of the points of the memo first, and then I'm going to give you some information of things you need to think about and prepare yourself for, and so that you can make the best decision for you and your family. As many of you all have seen the memo, it is basically asking agency heads, and keep in mind that the agency heads are all Trump appointees. And so they are going to do what it is that he basically tells them to do. So prepare yourself for that. And so he's asking them by March 13th that they submit their agency reorganization and RIF plans. It is no coincidence that he picked March 13th because many agencies' budget expire on the 14th for the continuing resolution. And therefore, he picked the day before so that they could have the plans in the event the government shuts down, which I doubt that it will. But in the event the government shuts down, they can still be behind the scenes working on these plans and looking at them and seeing if the agency heads have gone far enough in terms of cuts. And so this memo is requesting a significant reduction in the number of full-time equivalents or FTEs or people by eliminating the positions that are not required. And what does that mean? Required mean, is there a statute out there that says that this agency must do X, Y, and Z? And what positions support the X, Y, and Z? And if there's no statute or law out there that said that this must be done, the plan is to eliminate the remaining positions. If you support a statute that must be done, but you're not directly responsible for it, they are going to probably come for you. And they have to talk about it from a position perspective and not people, because reductions in force are based on positions and not people. So there will not be a list of names that will be made public, hopefully. It should really just be positions. And also asking the agencies to reduce their budget top line. And so because they plan to scale back the government so much that the agencies do not need as much money as they previously would request to support a certain number of positions. They're asking agencies to seek out opportunities to consolidate areas of the agency organization chart that may be duplicative. So, for example, what came to mind when I read that is If you think about, across government, you probably have multiple people who are management and program analysts. And so, what are they doing to support the statute that requires them to do the work, if it's one associated with that? And so, they are going to be looking at duplications. And because of the limited knowledge of the people that's going to be reviewing these plans, one program analyst may look like the next. And so you want to kind of keep that in mind. And they are going to try to have a skeleton crew doing the work, um, or they're going to just stop doing the work altogether. So keep that in mind. They are also talking about consolidating management layers. So, in many organizations across government, you have your first line supervisor, your second line supervisor, your third line supervisor, fourth line supervisor, and they're talking about consolidating that, collapsing that. And so, it may only be one or two levels of supervision. So many people who are supervisors are going to take a hit in this reduction in force as well. Also, they want agencies to look at reductions in components and positions that are non-critical. Non-critical is subjective, and so keep that in mind. If you are not directly supporting the mission of the agency, your position is probably going to be considered non-critical. So when I think about that, I think about the offices such as budget office, your human capital offices, they've already cut your DEI offices and they are going after the EEO offices. So it's offices like that. Like many offices also have like an exec sec office, executive secretariat office, if you're in a cabinet level agency. Some organizations have maybe like an executive director office. Those types of offices doesn't necessarily directly support the mission, and therefore they will probably be on the chopping block. They want to agencies to look at consolidating regional and field offices. And so if you work at particularly the cabinet level agencies where you may have employees across the United States, they are looking at consolidating those offices or either terminating some of those offices or eliminating some of those offices and then terminating the employees of those offices. They want to maximize the reduction of contract support. And so many agencies have lots of contractors, and a lot of contractors have already been let go. And so the unemployment rate is going to be massive, with the contractors being cut as well. They asking agencies to specifically identify the competitive areas. And I talked about the competitive areas in my reduction in force video. So if you have not seen that, please go back and look at that on my YouTube channel at Sherelle Higgins 123, because they want to identify the competitive areas that include positions not typically designated as essential during a lapse in appropriations. So when the government shuts down, the government operates on a skeleton crew, and I mean a real skeleton crew. And so those are the people that they are using as a baseline, or those are the positions that they're going to use as a baseline for how far they can cut positions. And so if you were not designated as critical or essential during a lapse in appropriations, then you are probably going to be in the line of fire. They're also talking about identifying, referring to the functions that are accepted from the Anti-Deficiency Act. The Anti-Deficiency Act is an act that basically says you have $3 and you can't spend no more than that. If you go over that, you are misusing government funds. And so they are going to be looking at those functions that are accepted from that and using that as well as a baseline. the memo goes on to talk about the hiring freeze that's going to continue. And in the hiring freeze, of course, the IRS was always going to be under the hiring freeze beyond the initial 90 days. But now the rest of the federal agencies will be continuing the hiring freeze, which means it's going to make it very difficult for federal employees to get other federal employment. And so, with the hiring freeze, again, they're talking about for every 4 people who leave the agency, they can only backfill 1, and that person has to be approved by the agency head, and the Doge team lead is what they're calling them. And so again, for these areas that are heavily populated with government employees, the government workers are going to have a hard time finding federal employment going forward under this administration. Um, they eliminate non-statutorily mandated functions by imposing the reduction in force. Now, it appears from the memo that they had an aha moment and realized that there's a legal way to do a reduction in force. And they, according to this memo, they are moving in the direction of the legal way to conduct a reduction in force. They're asking the agencies to renegotiate any bargaining unit agreements you may have to ensure that it does not inhibit the government from uh, operating in an efficient manner and employee accountability. Again, that's subjective. And so, the unions are going to do what the unions are going to do in terms of trying to protect the bargaining unit members. And as a result of that, the non-bargaining unit members will also benefit from whatever the union comes up with. Now, one thing that they put in the memo that causes me some concern is they are requiring agency heads to ask OPM to waive the 60-day notice that employees are entitled to when given a RIF separation notice. And they are asking them to ask OPM to make it 30 days. So instead of you getting a 60-day notice, you'll probably get a 30-day notice. That causes me a lot of pain because at least if you had 60 days, you're in a better position to try to plan for you and your families. But with 30 days, there's very little you can probably do in 30 days. But I guess that's the whole point of it, is to ensure that you don't have time to get yourself together. Now, the memo breaks out 2 phases. So what I just talked about was phase 1. Phase 2 is by April 14th, which is a month after the March 13th date. Hopefully, the budget will be in place and they'll have a better understanding of what the agencies are going to propose. But in phase 2, agencies are required to basically, talk about what's the future state of the agency. What does that look like? And how can they articulate that by cutting all of these positions, that the agency is going to be operating better. Now, and I know that that's not necessarily the case, but the agencies have already been told that they have to articulate that in some communications back to OPM and OMB. So of course, because these people are appointed by the administration, they are definitely going to do as they are instructed to do. In phase 2, they have to confirm that they have reviewed all your personnel data. I have said this a million times over, and I'll say it again here. Please make sure your stuff is correct. And if it's not, you need to get with your HR people, your human capital people, to make sure that it is corrected before they run this RIF. And so they want to make sure that you're on the right position description, that all of your data points in terms of your service computation dates and your veteran preference status and your duty location and all of that stuff is accurate, um, and that you have your four most recent performance appraisals, which they will only use three for determining what additional years of service you will have added to your actual years of service. And so, let's see. The whole point is to inflict pain, all to perpetuate the current lie that Doge is cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I noticed a couple of things, that when they're talking about cutting these contractors, they're cutting a lot of contractors, but none of the Doge contracts have been cut. They also talked about in the memo as an exception that this all of these cuts will not impact political appointees. Now, some political appointees need Senate confirmation, which are typically going to be your top two agency head people. But they also have political appointees called Schedule Cs. And those Schedule Cs employees, they just place them in the agency, and they are typically people who heavily supported their campaign. And they come in and the agency usually help them determine like what job they're qualified for and eligible and what grade level. And so they're not going to be cutting those positions. Those people will still come into the agency and try to run the agency without the career people there to kind of show them the way and help them understand what the rules and regulations are. They also, in phase two, the agencies plan to ensure that employees are grouped to the greatest extent possible based on like duties and job functions to promote effective collaboration and management. And so they are basically saying that they want to, just group employees in such a way that um, you don't need as many different sub organizations within an agency. And so they're going to be collapsing some of these agencies and putting them together so that you have a larger group of people working, I guess, on the same type of stuff. Um, any proposed relocations of agency bureaus and offices from Washington, D.C. and the National Capital Region to less costly parts of the country. So they're looking to move a lot of the federal positions from Washington, D.C. to less costly areas. That's going to save, according to them, that's going to save them money in terms of locality pay, and probably taking it to the red states where it is really probably a lot cheaper to live. And so that's in phase two. And then again, the competitive areas for the large scale RIFs. I saw an article today where they was talking about cutting at least 65% of the EPA for people who work on environmental stuff. And so, that impacts our air, our water, and things like that. And so that's going to be a deep, deep cut to the Environmental Protection Agency. Also, they are talking about, cutting the temporary and term employees, which I think at this point they probably have already done that, along with the reemployed annuitants. And a reemployed annuitant is someone who retired from the federal sector and returned after retirement to work. Also, any components absorbing functions, including how this will be achieved in terms of positions, funding, and space. And so they're asking them in the second phase to let us know how you're going to absorb these functions. And if you think about, if we use the Environmental Protection Agency as an example, if you're talking about cutting 65%, that's a lot. And I don't know how they are going to absorb the 65% with 35% of the people left. And so typically, when you look at positions from a classification standpoint, the more complex the work is, the higher the grade is. And so if some people happen to survive this large scale reduction in force, they will probably have to be at the higher grade levels, so that they can absorb the work of the lower grade level employees, and not necessarily have to give them any additional grades to support them doing the work that they're going to be doing. Um, the agency has to do a data run and really look at what the data shows in terms of ensuring that new career appointment hires are in the highest need areas and adhere to the general principle that, subject to appropriate exemptions, no more than one employee should be hired for every four. So again, they're going to be looking at, from a data perspective, does that really make sense to do? And so, um, in the second phase, they're going to be, just trying to figure out as they go. They flying by the seat of their pants. Is this really going to work? And if so, the people that are left behind, to what cost? Is it going to be to the agency? Forget the people. What cost is it going to be to the agency? Will the agencies be able to fulfill their mission if they are working at a 35% capacity? And so they are leaving it up to each agency to be able to articulate how they are going to operate most efficiently with 35%. I'm using as an example just because it's for EPA, with 35% of the positions. And so they have to, figure out how they articulate that. Um, and they need to provide an explanation of how their agency reorganization and RIF plan will improve services for Americans and advance the administration's policy priorities. That's funny to me because it's not a matter of having an option of explaining why this is probably not a good idea. They have to come up with some language to say, this is a great idea, and this is why I think it's a great idea, even if they don't necessarily believe that. Um, and the framework and the criteria the agency has used to define and determine efficient use of existing personnel and funds. And so again, this in the second phase, they're going to be doing a lot of explaining of why this is a great idea and how this is really going to work. Um, the agency's timetable and plan for implementing each phase, and this plan for monitoring and accountability and implementing this plan, they're going to have to, talk about what that timeline looks like. And of course, they're going to have a ceiling on the timeline. And so it's not like they can say over the next 6 months, this is how we can get these numbers down. They're going to have probably from April 14th, 30 days out, around May 13th or 14th, is probably when a lot of federal workers are going to be actually separated off the rolls, because they're only going to give you 30 days once they give you the notice. And so I wanted to kind of just run through that memo right quick and, just kind of give you some context around what this memo is saying and what it's asking the agencies to do. But I also wanted to talk about some things that you need to think about when it comes to this. Oh, one of the things I noticed in the memo, which is the first time that I've seen this mentioned, even though they called it the deferred resignation program as a buyout, which we all know it was not a buyout. In this memo, they did say to the agencies, use all the tools available to you. And one of the tools that they mentioned was the Voluntary Separation Incentive Program, which is VISA, which is also known as the buyout. Now, with the buyout, if you're eligible, if your position is eligible for the buyout, not all non-DoD agencies, you can get up to $25,000, and it's up to. Not everybody is going to get $25,000 because it's going to depend on how many years of service you have. And so you have to keep in mind that if you take the buyout, that you may not get the full 25,000, and they're going to take taxes off the top. So keep that in mind. You may not be talking about a whole lot of money. Of course, if you get RIFT, you will get your severance package. And again, that depends on how many years of service you have. You need to look at my RIFT video so that you can do some quick calculations on what your severance package will look like, because it's going to be different for each person. They also talked about the Early Retirement Authority, VERA. VERA and VISA are not together necessarily. So you could your position could be eligible for an early retirement authority, but not necessarily for the buyout authority. And so you would want to pay close attention to what your position is eligible for. If you are eligible for early retirement, and your agency has requested the authority from OPM and received approval, now is the time for you to seriously consider taking the early retirement authority. It is going to be in your best interest to take the early retirement authority as opposed to being RIFT. If you are RIFT, you're going to get your severance package, and that's going to be it. Along with your eligibility for priority consideration for under the Career Transition Assistance Program and the Interagency Career Transition Assistance Program. I talked about both of those programs in the RIF video, so you can go back and check that out. However, under VERA, if you have not been carrying the health insurance for the past 5 years, OPM typically gives the agencies a waiver and will allow you to take the insurance into retirement with you. That is the biggest bonus for retiring versus being separated. If you are separated through a RIF and you don't retire, you cannot take your health benefits with you. You can do the temporary coverage, which is going to cost you a whole lot more than what you are paying now. But with retirement, you still only pay the employee's portion at this point. Now that could change because everything is changing. Also, and one of the things you can do, or you should consider doing, or just kind of think through to see if this makes sense for you and your family, is for employees who are FERS, you have been paying some money into the retirement system. I'm not talking about TSP. This is something different. It's a retirement contribution. You can decide that you are going to take that retirement contribution out and they will pay it to you in a lump sum. If you take it out in a lump sum, you are essentially buying out whatever service time you have. And if at some point in the future you decide to come back into the government, then you will most likely will be starting from scratch. And whatever time you had prior will not count towards your retirement. So that's something you got to think through and see if that makes sense for you. But you have to have, in order to even request the lump sum payment for your retirement contributions, you have to have at least 5 years of credible service. If you want to request it, if you are CSRS, you must submit standard form 2802. Or if you are FERS, you have to submit standard form 3106. You submit those to your HR office within 30 days of your separation. If you submit it after the 30 days, then you have to submit it to OPM, and good luck with that. So you want to make sure that you kind of look at OPM's website and understand what that means if you decide to take your retirement contributions out to help sustain your family during this time. Um, on the FERS side, you will your contributions, well, either FERS or CSRS, your contributions are not taxable if you take it out in a lump sum, that because it's already been taxed. So that part is not taxable, but any interest that you get on top of that that the agency has to pay you is taxable. So think about that from that perspective. It is considered earned income, any interest that you may have. So if you're a long-time federal employee, that, just see what the interest is. It's typically around 3% or so, but ask the questions of your HR people. They should be able to give you exact numbers for that. With CSRS, if you worked more than a year but less than 5 years, then the interest will be included in your refund. And if you worked under FERS, then the interest, you just have to have worked for more than a year. If you leave government prior to retirement, you cannot continue your health benefits. And so you want to make sure that if you're eligible for retirement under early out authority or regular retirement, optional retirement, that you do that so that you have the benefit of health insurance for you and your family. Of course, everybody who has participated in the thrift savings plan, I'm not a tax advisor, I'm not a financial advisor, but I will tell you that under the thrift savings plan, if you withdraw money, you will have to pay that 10% penalty. If you're under the age of 55, you can only withdraw the portion that you put in. You cannot withdraw the agency matching portion if you do not retire. So, keep that in mind when you're looking at your TSP numbers. Just know that whatever that total number is, it may not all be accessible to you during this time. And so, you have early retirement as an option. You have, if you took the deferred resignation or you decide to quit your job prior to getting a RIF notice, just know that you will probably not be eligible for unemployment. And if you are RIFed and and you need to file for unemployment, you need to file for unemployment in the place that you worked, not where you live. So, for example, in the Washington, D.C. area, most federal employees work in Washington, D.C., but some may live in Maryland and some may live in Virginia. They have to file in Washington, D.C., not in Maryland or Virginia. So and each state's unemployment rules are different. So you want to make sure you understand the rules around unemployment for the state in which you worked or the District of Columbia. Um, Hold on, let me see. We got some comments here. That's a joke. That would be heartache for the Americans who rely on those services. Oh, absolutely. If it's hard for people to find jobs now, what's it going to look like for government employees who have not done a resume in 15 to 20 years, who would probably be overqualified for what's out here? Absolutely. It's going to be hard, and they setting the federal workers up so that the private industry don't even want to hire you because they think you lazy and trifling and you are a low productivity employee, and so therefore they probably don't want to hire you. And even if they do, they're going to try to lowball you in terms of salary. So be prepared for that. If we survive the crazy cuts, how can we advocate for promotion since we have more duties and changing our performance standards? So keep in mind, promotions are based on the complexity of the work, not the volume of the work. And so just because you may now be taking on the jobs of, let's say, 5 other people, because those other 5 people got walked out the door, that doesn't necessarily make you eligible for a promotion. Promotions are based on, and the higher grades are based on complexity and not volume. So keep that in mind. Companies will be scared to hire them because if when this clears up, then you have vacant positions in the private sector. Well, interestingly enough, and it's flying under the radar, but a lot of private companies are laying people off as well. And so having access to employment is going to be way more difficult than what we are accustomed to. Life insurance will be crazy. Absolutely. If you retire, think about whether or not you have any outside policies. If you do you really still need the government's life insurance? Think about that and, weigh the pros and cons of that to see what's more beneficial for you and your family. Place some of the money into an annuity. Very good, Sabrina. Yes. Protect the money. IULs are looking like a good option too. Sabrina, spell that out for me in the chat. What's an IUL? Um, can I call you afterwards? I have a few questions. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sabrina, spell that out for me. What's an IUL? Just so we all know. It's going to be a lot of things you have to really consider in terms of what your next move is going to be if you are caught up in this massive large scale rift. I also do, index universal life. Okay. So with getting your resume together, I offer resume writing and also mock interviews. I know some people have not interviewed in years. And so it is a skill that is lost if you have not been doing it on a regular basis. And so, as a paid service, I do offer resume writing and also mock interviews. So if you so choose to seek me out for those type of services, I am willing and available to assist you in doing that. But it's going to get tough. And as somebody said, the whole thing, this whole exercise is to inflict pain, but the pain is only going to be as bad as you allow it to be in your life. I know it's difficult during this time, even for retirees. They are talking about eliminating the first supplement. And so that would impact me. And that's a nice chunk of change for me every month. And so I'm not necessarily going to come out of this unscathed, and neither are other retirees who are getting the first supplement. But, you got to just make some decisions about your life. And decide what's important to you and what's going to be good for your family. So, try not to absorb too much of it. But, I wanted to give you an opportunity to really think about some of the things that may be at your disposal that you should be looking more into so that you can prepare as best you can. It's going to, yes, it's going to be devastating, and I get it. Because we were public servants because for one reason is because of job security, and we were connected to the missions of our agencies, and so we probably didn't anticipate, and up until this last election, that we were going to be this vulnerable. I've seen many people on social media, who voted for this administration just in tears because for some reason they thought it wasn't going to touch them. They just thought it was going to touch the other people, whoever those are. And so, this is going to touch a lot of people, and it's going to impact our economy in a bad way, because if federal workers are not working and private industry is laying people off and people are losing these contracts that supported the federal sector, that means that there's less money being put out in the economy. People are going to really pay attention to how they spend their money and not just be, frivolously spending money as we sometimes do. Definitely the restaurant industry is going to take a huge hit because we won't be able to afford to go out to eat. We won't be able to afford to travel. And it's just a lot of things we won't be able to do without our consistent salaries. And at the level of salaries that we were receiving. And so we want to make sure that we are thinking about these things now. I know a lot of people have kids in school and spring break is coming up. And, I want you to really think about, should you really go on that spring break trip, understanding that you may get caught up in this rift. You may, as a retiree, not have that supplement, that first supplement. Just really think about what makes sense for the long haul, because I believe that this is going to last for a good while. And because of the short timelines that the agencies are working under, they are not in a position to be able to really offer you that career transition education and systems that they would normally do under a RIF. Because the goal right now is just to get you off the rolls. And so, and then for those people who took the deferred resignation, um, I will be really surprised, and I'll be the first one to say I was wrong, but I will be really surprised if they honor paying people through September. I don't see that happening. I don't see how that's saving the government any money by paying you and not asking you to work for it. But if you do, good for you. But yeah, this is definitely gonna be painful for the country. I highly recommend that you get you a nice support system. Make sure you have a support system. Somebody at least you could just vent to, or somebody you can cry on their shoulders. And they're not going to tell you to suck it up and get over it, because this is going to be traumatic for a lot of people. Do some self check-ins, check your mental health, make sure you keep your mental health in order, because you're going to need that to get through all of this. Many of us, particularly women, we are the support. We are the support in the families, and so now it's going to be the time where we need support. And so, don't be afraid to ask for support. Right now, is DoD exempt? Kind of, sort of, not really. DoD is, I think some parts of DoD let go their probationary period employees, but the military is exempt. Not all of DoD necessarily is exempt. So, this is going to touch everybody. I don't think anybody's going to get out of this unscathed. Um, so let's see, very informed. I'll be sending my friends and family that are concerned about their next moves. Thank you. Okay, yes, I'm willing to help people. I will help as many people as I can. People, if you have questions about your particular situation, you can DM me. I'll be as responsive as I can. I will warn you though, between Thursday and Sunday, I'm probably going to be offline for the most part. Um, because I have chosen to live my life this weekend. But beyond that, I will be available, and I will be willing to kind of talk you through your particular situation. Federal employment will never look the same again. This is a watershed moment that will change the trajectory of our country. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, once again, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, make the best decision you can. And I will continue to come on and try to educate you on things you need to think about, and what these words on the paper that they are sending out actually means, and so that you can try to make some informed decision. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I will probably do another live, probably Monday, depending on what happens between Thursday and Sunday. But I'm here. If you need me, please reach out. Don't be afraid to ask, because you don't know what you don't know, right? And to have somebody who, did this for 32 years and has lots of experience doing riffs, and what it means and what it looks like, I'm a good person to tap into. So thank you all. Try to have a good evening, and God bless you all. Thank you for joining and participating in Let's Get Into It. I want to thank my special guest for being brave enough to get into it. Without you, these conversations cannot happen. Remember, different viewpoints, respect, and love are the foundations of Let's Get Into It. If there's a topic you think I should discuss, drop me a recommendation. If you're interested in being my special guest, let me know because we can and will get into it. Have a great day on purpose, and I look forward to your continued engagement and support as we get into it.